Morning, y'all. I've been gone for a while. I've had a lot of soul searching to do. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of accountability. What does it look like? When is it needed? What power does it hold? If you've ever felt wronged or have ever wronged someone else yourself, you've thought about the concept of accountability too. Go ahead and picture in your head the strongest example you have of a conflict with someone or similar experience that you've had. What got you mad about it? What got them mad? The hardest part of resolving these conflicts is often that second question, rather than the first. For most people, it's easy to scream to the world what makes you mad. For some of us who just want to keep everyone else around us happy, it can actually be quite hard to stand your ground when you feel wronged. And for any type of person, admitting the areas where we wrong someone else can be the hardest thing of all. Accountability is a double-sided coin that contains all these nuances and much more. When you think about that person or that experience that pissed you off, ask yourself, did I make that known to the people involved? Did I stand up for myself, and how did I stand up for myself? Accountability starts internally, by holding yourself accountable to your own comfortability, boundaries, likes and dislikes. Avoiding these questions at the start of any conflict will surely only make it harder to hold anyone else accountable. If you never make your boundaries known to yourself, let alone to others, it's very hard to expect others to know where they lie. If you miscalculate where your boundaries are and later want to modify them, don't worry. There's a version of accountability that covers that too. This might be the hardest part, admitting where you misjudged, where you made a mistake. We as humans don't often like to admit our mistakes, big or small ones. They tend to remind us of our deepest flaws, insecurities, and negative experiences that shaped us that we may be running from. A typical thing to think is that if I admit to doing something bad, that automatically makes me a bad person. And there are a million reasons any of us could think of for why we feel pressured to ensure that we appear to the world as a good person rather than as a bad person. It's our driver in life, ensuring that we are constantly on the right side of good versus evil. My thoughts are that there's actually no such thing as a good person or a bad person. I believe that we're all just people, capable of doing tremendous good and tremendous evil. It would be a really nice thing if there was a DNA test for it, if everyone was assigned one at birth and we all had to walk around with a sign on us that said good or bad. But, as you've heard me say a lot, the world is complicated and nothing is that simple. Rather than a clear label of good or bad on each individual, the idea of being a good or bad person ultimately comes down to what you do and why you do it. There are so many good things that we can do in our pursuit to be a good person. Volunteer to help people, journal, meditate, watch videos or podcasts, make videos or podcasts, even a simple smile. But through my journeys, I've realized that one of the best things we as people can do that helps us reach our ultimate goal of being a so-called good person is to admit to yourself and anyone in your life the mistakes that you've already made and the mistakes that you are capable of making. A phrase I often think of is that the dumbest person in the world thinks that they know everything, but the smartest person in the world knows that they always have so much more to learn. In this circumstance, where we all run from our imperfections and do any of those actions I mentioned before on the quest to feel enlightened, perhaps we can say that the least enlightened person in the world thinks that they're the most enlightened. But the most enlightened person knows that they can face their deepest flaws and still let their greatest qualities shine through them. Our power comes from what we choose to do with this knowledge of self and why. Once we've done this work, once we've addressed what lies inside of us that may lead us to make mistakes, now we can start to look outward and demand the same from those in our lives. Think back to that conflict for a moment. When I mentioned the idea that you may have made a mistake in that conflict, did the words, "but they," come to your mind at all? Did your brain immediately think of all the things that they did that made you mad or made you act the way that you acted? Oftentimes we think that all we need to feel resolve from a conflict is an admission from the other person of their wrongs. We tell ourselves that if we just heard them say that they were wrong, I can feel right, and therefore I can feel good. But the ironic twist about saying "but they" is that the word "but" usually follows an admission. As in, yes, I did blank, but they did blank. Do you think it's possible that the other person is waiting for that admission from you? What if we focused on that first part of the sentence, the admission from yourself, for just a second longer than we focused on the second part of it, the accusation? If you find understanding for yourself and the mistake that you're now admitting to, can we then find some understanding for the other person for what made you mad, especially if they also make their admission? Does that help the conflict feel more balanced? Because now we've addressed both sides of that coin known as accountability to understand the other person and ourselves. It can be really hard to focus on your side of it. Of course it can. But unfortunately, neither side will get addressed if one side never gets addressed. And you may live your life wondering what might have been if the conflict was never resolved through this process. I'll tell you a story to illustrate my point here about my best friend since I was little, Mark. Mark's father, Zeke, was one of the strongest, most caring people I've ever met, and certainly a second father figure to me growing up. Before I ever knew them both, though, Zeke had a complicated past. As a young man, he was in the Army and started a family of 3 children. After leaving the Army, though, he, like so many others, fell victim to alcoholism, which drove him to leave his family. His kids grew up hating his guts for abandoning him. Years later, Zeke found his way to Alcoholics Anonymous, where he sobered up and fell in love with a fellow person in recovery, Bernadette. Together, they had Mark and his brother, moved out of the city, and started living their lives as the people that I was fortunate enough to meet. Somewhere along the line, Zeke reconnected with his first family and took his accountability. I'll never truly know what he said to try to regain their trust, but I'd imagine it didn't include phrases like, "I know I made a mistake, but you," or "I messed up, but I'm better now, and you should just focus on that," or "I didn't do anything wrong, and you just started hating me for no reason." No. Rather, I think he said something along the lines of, "I wronged you tremendously at a time when you needed me, and you didn't deserve that. I surely made my mistakes because of a hurt that I felt at that time, but I had no right to pass that hurt on to you. Perhaps I don't even deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know the work I've done to right these wrongs, and how much I value that forgiveness if I'm so lucky to have it." However he said it, his family forgave him, and they all started living as a unit, with his 5 children never thinking of each other as half-siblings, but rather as just family, united through love and understanding. About 10 years ago now, Zeke passed away. At his funeral, in between jazz performances, his children took turns giving speeches. His oldest son, Zeke Jr., summed it all up perfectly. He said, "My father was the best father in the world because he knew that he used to be the worst father in the world." Sitting in the crowd, I heard that, gave my father a big hug, and started to truly understand the idea of accountability. I'm sure the conflicts you pictured are much more minor than this one, so you're probably finding it hard to relate or find a similar resolution for yourself. But that's kind of my whole point. If Zeke could hold himself that accountable for such a hurtful action, and if his family could hear that accountability and find forgiveness in their hearts for him, to the point of a renewed love and connection between them all, then I believe that any conflict of any extent, in any circumstance, can find some resolve if the right steps are taken. Whatever conflict you're facing, or that you face in the future, I pray that you know that there's always a path through it, as long as we, to the best of our ability, address both sides of that coin called accountability. Thanks for stopping by, y'all. Like and subscribe for more meditation content. Come back next time and keep your third eye open.